Welcome back to the Archive Network. Aurelius here with Malik, curators of the Lineage Archive. We left Sapa Inca Dynasty, Hanan Cusco, last time at the court dissolved. The palaces emptied, and the world of the Sapa Inca faded into legend. Today we pick up where we left off. A golden empire can shatter in a single generation. The Sapa Inca Dynasty was thrust into crisis after Huayna Capac's death. It was not merely a collapse of leadership. It was a collapse of faith. The death of Huayna Capac was a decisive moment for the empire, but it was the invisible enemy of disease that truly decimated their ranks.
It wasn't just disease. It was the uncertainty that followed Huayna Capac's death that sowed the real seeds of chaos. The epidemic took not only the king, but also his heir, Hanan Cusco. The empire stood leaderless, and the court in Cusco became a shadow of its former self, filled with intrigue rather than order.
In this vacuum of power, two brothers emerged, Huáscar and Atahualpa. Each laid claim to the title of Sapa Inca, rallying their supporters with fervor. Huáscar enjoyed the loyalty of Cusco, the heart of the empire, while Atahualpa's influence grew strong in Quito, far away. As their rivalry deepened, the fragile unity that once held the empire together began to unravel. What followed was a brutal civil war, a grim reminder of how quickly fortunes can shift in the world of empires.
But this wasn't just a mere power struggle. It was a fight that devastated the people. The Inca Civil War bled the land dry. Fields were trampled, crops ruined, and loyalty turned to fear. Families were torn apart, and even the local curacas faced impossible choices. They had to pick sides, knowing their decisions could lead to ruin for their communities. Friends became enemies overnight, and the scars of that conflict still echo in the hearts of those who lived through it.
Yes, but that's just the nature of empires. They thrive on conflict until they eventually crumble. Take the Cajamarca, the royal road. It was once a proud symbol of Inca strength and unity. Now, though, it's become a grim path of devastation. Armies march along it, leaving destruction in their wake, and entire cities find themselves caught in the crossfire. It's a stark reminder of how quickly power can shift, and how history often repeats itself.
Aurelius, you make it sound like this was inevitable. But we can't ignore that the suffering of the people was a direct result of choices made by those in power. The rich tapestry of Inca society unraveled not just because of warfare, but also due to a betrayal of trust. Whole communities were torn apart. Rituals that once brought joy and unity turned into blood-soaked plazas, leaving scars that generations would carry. It's a harsh reminder of the human cost in these grand narratives.
The fall of the Inca was not just about civil strife. While the empire reeled from internal discord, an external threat emerged on the horizon. Francisco Pizarro arrived with his small band of conquistadors. They were few in number, yes, but their ambitions were nothing short of ruthless. They saw an opportunity in the chaos, exploiting every weakness. It's a stark reminder of how quickly the tides can turn in the world of empires, leaving devastation in their wake.
Their arrival wasn't just a military action. It was a complete upheaval of a way of life for the Inca people. They were too divided to respond effectively, and that made them vulnerable. Atahualpa's capture during his meeting with Pizarro really highlighted just how fragile their situation was. It wasn't just the loss of a leader. It tore at the core of their identity. Families were left without direction, and a deep sense of uncertainty settled over the land.
True, but let's contemplate the staggering scale of the ransom demanded for his freedom. The Inca delivered vast amounts of gold and silver from their sacred temples, desperately hoping to buy back their beloved ruler. Yet, in a cruel twist, even with that ocean of wealth, Atahualpa was executed. On that fateful day, the ideological heart of the empire ceased to beat, and were left to ponder how easily empires can snuff out their own lifeblood.
That execution marked the end of an era for so many. The conquerors installed puppet rulers who lacked any real power or respect from the people. The ancient Inca rituals, rich with meaning and history, were brutally suppressed. Families lost not just their leaders but their spiritual connections to the land and their ancestors. This wasn't just a takeover. It was a deep cultural annihilation that left scars on the hearts and minds of the community for generations.
Yet, that hollow authority held sway for years, long after the heart of the empire had begun to fade. Resistance simmered beneath the surface, but the days of empire were over. The last flickering ember of Inca sovereignty flickered in Vilcabamba, where Tupac Amaru ruled as the final Sapa Inca Dynasty. He presided over a shadow court, a mere remnant of a once great civilization. In those dim halls, whispers of lost glory lingered, echoing the weight of history that had shaped us all.
And yet, even in that shadow, the spirit of the Inca persisted. Tupac Amaru's resistance was not just about fighting for land. It was deeply rooted in the struggle for identity and culture. The final fall in 1572 was more than just a battle lost. It represented the heartbreaking culmination of centuries of history, and the end of a lineage that had once thrived. Families, traditions, and a way of life were all swept away, leaving echoes of what once was.
The court dissolved, the palaces emptied, and the world of the Sapa Inca faded into legend. The echoes of their greatness still haunt the Andes, reminders of what once was. We see it time and again. Empires rise, they capture the imagination, and then they crumble, leaving us with stories that shape our understanding of history. Each fallen empire teaches us something, a lesson etched in the stones of the past, whispering truths we can't ignore.
That's where we leave it this time. Sapa Inca Dynasty, Hanan Cusco, continues. The story isn't finished yet. Find the full series on the Lineage archive, part of the Archive Network. We'll be back with the next chapter.